I've told many scary stories before, but these are some of my scariest. Here are 3 very scary, true rainy night horror stories. Let's start with number 3. First up is a creepypasta that was sent in by a user called Anonymous. It goes, I was traveling home from a family trip when we decided to stop for the night at a hotel. It was late, around midnight, and we had been driving for hours, so we were all exhausted. When we got to the hotel, we checked in and went straight to our room. It was a nice enough room. Nothing really stood out except for one thing. There was only one small window in the whole room, and it was covered by what looked like a 2-foot by 2-foot sheet of plywood. The people at the front desk must have noticed me staring at it because they knocked on the door and said, "Hey, just wanted to let you know that window doesn't open and you can't go out there." Then they left. I asked my parents about it, but they just shrugged and said, "Don't worry about it. I'm sure it's just a safety precaution or something." So we went to sleep. In the middle of the night, though, I was awoken by what sounded like screams in the forest. Big guttural screams. Obviously, I was scared, and I remember thinking, great, now I'm gonna have to listen to some crazy person screaming in the forest all night. I tried to go back to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw a dark, scary figure standing in that one small window silhouetted against the moonlight. Of course, I didn't want to believe that, so I turned my lamp on and looked over at the window. Sitting in bed, I don't think I've ever been more terrified than when I saw the outline of a handprint on the other side of that plywood. Someone or something was on the other side trying to get in. I immediately started screaming for my parents and ran to the door. But when I tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. The doorknob felt hot, and it turned out the room was completely locked from the outside. My parents woke up and started banging on the door asking what was going on. I told them to run away because whatever was out there was after me. And then I heard a loud crash and the sound of heavy footsteps near the door. My parents finally realized that something was wrong, and they started helping me bang on the door, screaming for help. But it was no use. The door didn't open. Then the footsteps stopped and I could hear muffled voices trying to get in. The muffled voice said, "Let me in," over and over again. I swear this story is not even made up. It is true. I am absolutely telling the truth. I'm not kidding. I don't know who or what was on the other side of that door, but I do know it wasn't human. Please tell me I'm not the only one who thinks that. What kind of human screams like that? What kind of human tries to break into a hotel room in the middle of the night? This goes beyond crazy. I don't want to imagine what would have happened if my parents hadn't been in that room with me. We never did end up finding out what was out there because in the morning after, of course, not sleeping at all, we called the front desk and asked them to send someone to open the room door. They did, and when we got out, there was no sign of any forced entry, and the only thing out of the ordinary was a few leaves piled up near the window. It was summer, so leaves aren't exactly out of place, you know. We thanked the desk clerk for letting us leave without paying, and we got the hell out of there. To this day, I don't know what was out there, but sometimes when I'm lying in bed trying to sleep, I can still hear those guttural screams. Oh, and I never go anywhere near that hotel again. I assume the figure in the window was whoever or whatever was making those sounds. It couldn't have been anything else. Whatever was on the other side of that door, I don't want to know what it was. That poor guy in the window has probably died 100 times by now. And speaking of things dying 100 times, let's move on to now, too. This next story comes from a Reddit user named Magus of the North. It goes, when I was 19, I worked as a security guard in a large city. One night during my shift, it was raining cats and dogs. I was driving around the perimeter of the industrial estate. That was my responsibility when I heard a series of screams in the distance. I stopped the car and listened. The screams came again, closer this time. A man's voice, strong and loud, screaming in pain. I thought, bloody hell, someone's getting murdered out there. I found the source of the commotion near the main gate. 2 men were running away from an older man who was chasing them. As I drove past, I heard him scream one final time, "Get back here, you bastards. I'll kill you." The next morning I checked the CCTV footage. The men had broken into a workshop and set fire to 2 cars inside. The older man was the owner of the business. He chased them out of the site, but he didn't actually catch them. A bit later I received a call from one of the owners. He told me that his cars weren't insured and that the police had done nothing about the incident. Would I consider doing something about it? I knew exactly where this was going. The police had already told me that unless I had caught the culprits red-handed, they wouldn't be able to do anything. So I told him that I would look into it. Later that week, I discovered that the owner had recorded the license plate numbers of the 2 cars that had been burnt out. One was registered to a local scrapyard, and the other one had false plates. I visited the scrapyard first. After looking through their records, The manager confirmed that the car had been dropped off a few days prior, but he denied knowing anything about the break-in. I could see that he was hiding something, so I paid him another visit 2 days later. I searched the premises until I found 2 tires buried in a pile of rubble. I dug them out and took them to the forensics lab. The tires were a match for the ones that had been burnt out. The manager was arrested shortly after. But this is where the story gets weird. When I was watching the security footage of the break-in, I had noticed a third person in the background. He hadn't participated in the theft, but he had stood by while it was happening. I recognized him as a local drug dealer. The police hadn't noticed him, but they did question me about it. I had seen him deliver drugs to one of the men involved several times, so I knew that he knew them. I testified against the manager and identified the drug dealer in court. As soon as the trial finished, I went to speak to the dealer. He was furious. He swore at me and threatened to have me killed. I ignored him and walked away. The last time I saw him, he was kneeling in front of me. He was begging me to release him because he had information about the murder of a local woman. I had been trying to find out who had killed her for months with no luck, but the dealer had stumbled upon some evidence while delivering drugs. I cut him loose and he disappeared. A month later, I was patrolling near the industrial estate where the theft had taken place. It was raining hard and I was soaked to the bone. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. "Get back here, you bastards. I'll kill you." I shone my spotlight in the direction of the voice and saw a shadowy figure running away. Behind him were 2 men, laughing hysterically. I gave chase. When I reached the men, they told me that the shadowy figure had just tried to rob them. When I questioned him, he claimed that he had caught them stealing from him and that's why he tried to kill them. I didn't buy his story, but I let him off with a warning. I was about to go back to the car when one of the thieves said, "Wait, I think I dropped my wallet." I helped him search for it, but it was nowhere to be found. He seemed disappointed, so I offered to drive him home. On the way, he told me that he had been staying in a hotel for the past week. He had been hiding from the owner of the business that he had robbed. According to him, the owner had killed several people and he was afraid that he would be next. He asked me to keep him safe. I told him that I would take care of him, but first, we needed to find his wallet. He agreed, and I drove him back to the hotel. I found the wallet behind the same old building where I had first encountered the owner. The thief was very grateful, and he invited me to go drinking with him to celebrate. I declined, but I promised to check in on him from time to time. Over the next few months, we became friends. He told me that the owner had kidnapped and murdered several women, and he begged me to bring the police to his hotel room so they could arrest him. I did just that. The police found several bodies in the hotel room, and the owner committed suicide. The thief was sentenced to 3 years in prison for his involvement in the crimes, but he was released after serving half his sentence. I haven't spoken to him since. That was a wild story, but it's nothing compared to no one. First up is a creepypasta submitted by a user called James. It goes, I was driving home from visiting my dad on a major holiday. I live in a rural area, so the roads are deserted on nights like this. I usually listen to music or podcasts while I drive, but tonight I decided to listen to the radio. About halfway home, the radio started picking up strange signals. I switched stations and they all had the same signal, which sounded like someone repeatedly stabbing a mattress with a sharp object. I thought it was weird, but I figured it was just some new form of torture porn on the radio. To make matters worse, the sky got cloudy and it started raining sideways. I was on a 2-lane road, so I pulled over to let a faster vehicle pass. As I watched him pass, I noticed that he was driving slowly, like he was looking for something. Maybe it was just a coincidence, right? Well, the driver pulled over too and turned his lights off, so I continued on my way. 5 minutes later, I heard a police siren in the distance, and I assumed that the driver had gotten pulled over. Less than a minute later, the sirens were right on top of me. I rolled down my window and a cop yelled, "Get out of your car, sir, and put your hands in the air." I was so scared that I accidentally pressed the gas pedal and turned the wheel. The cop opened fire, shattering my window. Startled, I pressed down hard on the accelerator and turned sharply onto the shoulder of the road. I continued down this gravel road until I saw the headlights of the car that had been following me. I stopped, got out of my car and started running into the forest. I ran until I could no longer hear the crunch of gravel under my pursuer's tires. Eventually, I came across a house. I banged on the door, desperate for help. A kind woman opened the door and I explained my situation to her. She let me use her phone so I could call my wife, but the line was dead. I knew that they were monitoring everything I was doing, so I stayed on the line until the woman hung up on me. I tried calling 911, but the call didn't go through. I knew I had to get out of there before the cops found me. So I thanked the woman and I ran back to my car. As I was running, I kept hearing the same strange noise coming from the woods. It sounded like nails on a chalkboard, but it was definitely not human-made. Once I got back to the car, I floored it and raced home. That was easily the scariest night of my life. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my channel for more scary stories.